Pat Forde of Sports Illustrated reported today that the University of Tennessee has found itself under fire by the NCAA again. This time potentially regarding NIL violations, which NCAA sources told Forde are major in nature. Now, the school has refused to comment other than saying there is an investigation, but they haven't received a notice of allegations. First off, are any name, image, likeness, or NIL violations really, major at this point? The NCAA had a chance to get out in front of this crap years ago. But Mark Emmert and that bunch, of course, in Indianapolis, kept going to Congress for help rather than setting up their own rules before California forced the issue, right? That is beside the point, though. Other schools are dealing with this, too. Miami, they have been pretty brazen with their NIL program. They've basically threatened the NCAA to try and do something about it. Florida recently received an NOA over the recruitment of Jaden Rashada, which was rumored to involve a contract worth $13 million for him to play in Gainesville. Now, obviously, he's at Arizona State now, so I don't think Florida actually paid that, but regardless. Florida State, they reached an agreement that got their offensive coordinator suspended for 3 games this upcoming season, along with, a hefty fine, a disassociated booster, which rumors say was over their recruitment of Georgia offensive lineman Amarius Mims when he entered the transfer portal last year. Now, notice we haven't seen anything for Texas A&M yet, but I'm sure that's coming eventually. I'm sure we'll see that too. But back to Tennessee, where all the rumors were saying that star quarterback Nico Iamaleava, I hope I said that right, God, Iamaleava. I'm going to try it a million times. I swear, I'm going to get it right before next season. But they say that he got a deal worth $8 million from a UT collective to play college football in Knoxville. Now, the collective has deals with athletes from 11 different sports, so it could be more than just a football problem. But nobody knows for sure right now, right? The only details that are out there are from a New York Times article that states that the investigation is focused in part on the use of a private jet by a so-called donor collective to fly a high-profile recruit, Nico, to where? To campus. Of course. The biggest problem that Tennessee runs into is the fact that they just finished another NCAA case last summer, which involved over 200 NCAA violations, including 18 that were considered level 1, and level 1s are supposedly the most egregious. UT didn't get a bowl ban, and partially that's because the state's attorney general threatened legal action against the NCAA. But instead, they were given a huge fine that covered 2 years of bowl payments. They had to vacate 11 wins from 2019 and 2020. And, of course, they had multiple recruiting restrictions placed on the program. Because this would consider Tennessee a repeat violator, the question of whether or not the NCAA could hit them with a postseason ban this time does come into question, right? UT got credit for exemplary cooperation last time out, but in that instance, they reported the violations themselves, in part because it was an easy way to not have to pay a huge buyout to Pruitt, right? And he ended up with a 6-year show cause penalty because of that whole mess anyway. So how cooperative do we think Tennessee is really going to be this time? A source from Knoxville told Forde that they don't believe there were any violations in the NIL realm because, and I quote this from the story, NCAA guidance in that evolving area is, quote, vague and contradictory. Now, here's what I think. You guys that have followed this channel for a while, I'm an Alabama fan. I do my best to be unbiased here. I really don't like Tennessee, mostly because of how Tennessee fans treated me when they were whipping the Tide's ass back in the 90s. But I don't think there's any chance anything major comes of this. Right? Like I said earlier, the NCAA had ample opportunities to do something about NIL before the California bill SB 206 in 2020. And once NIL was set loose, there is nothing that the NCAA has been able to do to circumvent the Wild West nature of some of these things. Do NCAA laws say that using NIL as a recruiting inducement is illegal? Of course. But good luck proving any of that. And good luck trying to fight the NCAA law actually supersedes state laws. Like, to this point, there's not a single court case that the NCAA has been able to win in order to actually enforce their rules. Ralph Russo from the AP, he had a good tweet today that summarized the situation. and why the NCAA is even trying to enforce rules right now. He said that the crux of the NCAA's problem is that they have schools complaining to them about rules not being enforced, but as soon as they try to enforce the rule, the violating school then goes on the attack. And in fact, of course, the University of Tennessee chancellor went on the attack after Forde's article came out and made really good points, right? The whole email to NCAA President Charlie Baker is a must-read, but some of the statements that stood out to me, for example, were this one. All right, so regrettably, in this chaotic environment, the NCAA enforcement staff is trying to retroactively apply unclear guidance to punish and make an example of our institution and others. I like that one. And in this one especially, right? It is intellectually dishonest for the NCAA staff to issue guidelines that say a third-party collective or business may meet with prospective student athletes, discuss NIL, and even enter into a contract with prospective student athletes, but at the same time say that the collective may not engage in conversations that would be of a recruiting nature. Any discussion about NIL might factor into a prospective student athlete's decision to attend an institution. This creates an inherently unworkable situation, and everyone knows it. So, expectations have to change in this new modern reality. There is no such thing as cheating in the sport of college football anymore. If you can convince a kid to come play for your school, great. If you don't at first, don't worry. They'll likely be back on the market again in another year or two because the latest open transfer suit by West Virginia, Ohio, and all those other states has made it open season. The transfer market, just the market in general for players, is absolutely crazy, right? So do we think it's wild that Tennessee paid a football player $8 million to play in Knoxville on Saturdays? Absolutely, because stuff like this was always under the table and likely way less than $8 million back then, if we're being honest. But the truth of the matter is that anything goes now, and anything will continue to go until college football is professionalized. But that's a whole other story that we won't dive into today. My advice for Tennessee fans right now is don't worry about this, because the NCAA has no teeth, and they haven't since the Austin case. One more additional thing, you Tennessee fans that watch us, don't dislike this video just because I'm an Alabama fan. I'm trying to be unbiased here. So, help me out, click like, all that kind of stuff. See you next time. Thanks for listening to Winning Cures Everything. Make sure and follow me on Twitter @GaryWCE. If you want to toss in a question, you can email me Gary@winningcureseverything.com. Make sure and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.